Alrighty, well, suppose we should probably talk some Minnesota Wild, eh? Ooh, do I really have to? Yeah, I guess I probably should, being that I am a Minnesota Wild fan and all that stuff, but, yeah, oof. So, anyway, first and foremost, hi, Jacob here, and, whew, to say this season has been an interesting ride is, well, an understatement. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and kind of get into this a little bit more here. But yeah, the Minnesota Wild go into All-Star break at 21-23-5 after choking away the last two games in the third period after being up by one goal in both of those games. I mean, what else is there to say? What else is there to do? What else is there what else? It's just one of those things where I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the team is just giving up. I don't know if all the injuries are just, too big to overcome. I don't know what Guerin's plans are going into, the trade deadline and stuff like that. But you got to make a decision here, buddy. And there's pretty much one decision I think that needs to be made here. And that's look for the future. Yes, I understand, that's not always easy to do. Especially when literally the only two freaking people that don't seem to understand that are the general manager and the owner. But it's like, again, most of the Wild fans that I've talked to, most of the Wild fans that I know are just saying, look, tank the season, bring up all the young guys, look at the future. Get the future guys up here, because we have a lot of guys in Iowa that are, the future, for lack of a better term. Granted, I will say most of the guys from Iowa have played in Minnesota this year just due to injuries, due to illness, due to just some dumb luck or unluck or whatever you want to say there, just yeah, I think this might be the most Iowa depth players that I've seen up here maybe since Iowa became the official, AHL team for the Minnesota Wild. So and even down there in Iowa too, it's been a rough season. It sounds like with the new coaching staff and stuff like that. So yeah, overall, it's not been a good year for the Wild organization from the AHL and NHL level. But again, that sort of happens, especially when most of your key pieces from both Iowa and Minnesota are, either in Iowa or in Minnesota, I should say. So it's and look, I'm not saying the season is lost necessarily, because again, 2 games below 500, but honestly, the rest of the season, what I want to see, the young guys. I want to see the future players, the future prospects, the guys that are going to be, again, the future for the rest of the season here, because going into this offseason, this is going to be a very pivotal offseason, especially if we get a lottery pick, like a high pick. Because I'm not saying we're going to get Celebrini or anything like that, but if we can get one of those top prospects, especially with Urov and, Wallstead and guys like that, pretty much ready to go. Well, granted, Wallstead is already up here because of the injuries to both, ironically enough, Gus and Marc-Andre Fleury. So, look, again, if you're Guerin, if you're Leopold, you definitely need to take a hard look in the mirror and be like, all right, is this team actually competitive, or should we try to gain assets for the future here? Because again, I'm not saying Guerin's on the hot seat or anything like that, but it's definitely turning into a preheating oven at this point. especially with the future coming up, and especially with, again, the young prospects coming over, the young guys coming over. I mean, the Wild identity as we know it might need to change, and it should be changing because the NHL is changing. It's no longer just an enforcer, throw it around all the time sort of league. Granted, you still need to have your physical tough guys because, well, like teams like Vegas, Florida, Boston, teams that are always constantly in the hunt at the end of the year for, like, the Stanley Cup and stuff like that, have skill, speed, and just enough grit to not get knocked over. And unlike teams like Edmonton and Toronto, that's, I think, their biggest downfall is they just don't have the same level of grit that they need on top of the speed and skill that they have. Because at the end of the day, hockey is still a physical sport. I mean, let's be honest here. Literally, there's a whole premise of knocking guys into boards, knocking people off the puck, and just knocking into people. But, yeah. So basically, just to kind of wrap this ramble session up and like update and recap and all that stuff, the big thing that I need to see from the Wild is the future. What is the future going to look like as we go into the months of February, March, and then a little bit of April? What is the future of this team? What is the core going to look like? Who's going to be on the core? And also what pieces get traded, trade deadline and all that stuff. I just hope he doesn't try to go out there and buy a bunch of rentals and stuff like that aren't going to do anything. But at the same time, I don't know. Because again, it seems like the two people that don't understand what's actually going on here are the two people that are in charge of making those decisions. So, at this point, it's pretty much just buckle up and see what the hell happens. I mean, yeah. Because again, even coming into this year, I had a feeling, okay, this is probably going to be a down year. We're going to figure out what's going on, what the future is, what do we have with our young guns, and honestly, the future's bright. Between Faber, between Rossi, Kaprizov, if he sticks around, I mean, Eriksson Ek is still in his prime and stuff like that. I mean, there's enough pieces to build around to have a very solid core for the future here. And hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Brock Faber becomes the captain here in a few years. Hell, I could argue that Marcus Foligno should probably be captain now and Spurgeon should just retire and all that stuff because, again, for those of you who may or may not know, because I don't know if I've actually said this, but Spurgeon is officially out for the rest of the year to get, I think, both back and hip surgery? Yeah, back and hip surgery. So, again, wish him a speedy recovery and all that stuff, but yeah, I mean, this is pretty much what we're going to be looking at for the rest of the year here. But also, I will say, though, officially got everything booked for the game on March 23rd against the Blues. So, regardless of what happens, we're still going to be going to that game. Like I say, just because the team sucks doesn't necessarily mean, I'm not going to go. Trust me, Minnesota sports, I've seen my fair share of bad teams. While I'm looking at two of them from this past year, well, maybe not bad teams, just frustrating and maybe some unfortunate circumstances thrown into there. But again, that's just the name of the game in sports. You pretty much need just as much luck as you do skill, speed, and strength. And if you don't quite have the same amount of luck, well, you end up like how the Vikings did this year and how the Wild currently are as well. But yeah, 21, 23, and 5 going into the All-Star break. Next game we play is at Chicago on February 7th, who is worse than we are, but again, that doesn't mean anything, especially if we go off of past history coming off of the All-Star break. The Wild tend to start slow out of All-Star break and then usually kick it in the gear the following week. But Yeah, just been one of those years, I have a feeling. So, yeah, we'll just wait and see. So until we meet again, this is Jacob. Have a good day. And, yeah,